In 1978, I was responsible for the deaths of 89 people in a mid-air collision over Nevada, and the 8-foot-tall gray who crashed in the desert that night revealed that Jesus taught forgiveness because souls choose their crossing moment before they're born. I was a skeptic, an air traffic controller trained in physics and rational thinking. When that being told me those 89 souls had already chosen their transition before my radar error, I wanted to call it deception. But what he showed me about consciousness, destiny, and the true meaning of Christ's words on the cross would finally release me from 12 years of unbearable guilt. Before this story ends, you'll understand why Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do," and it has nothing to do with what the church taught you. Let me tell you what happened that night in the Nevada desert, 12 years after the worst mistake of my life. March 15th, 1990, 11:47 p.m. I was 41 years old, sitting in the dim glow of radar screens at McCarran Approach Control in Las Vegas. Night shift, the shift I'd requested for 12 years straight because I couldn't face daylight anymore, couldn't face people's eyes, couldn't face myself. The screens painted their familiar green trails across the darkness, commercial flights, private planes, the usual traffic. Then, at 11:51, something appeared that shouldn't exist. No transponder code, no flight plan, no radio contact. Just a blip, moving at impossible speed, descending rapidly northeast of the city. "McCarran Approach, are you seeing this?" came the voice from the tower. "Affirmative," I responded, my hand already reaching for the phone to military radar. "Unknown traffic, no squawk, velocity," I checked again. The numbers didn't make sense. "Velocity beyond any known aircraft." The object descended in a pattern that violated every law of physics I understood. No deceleration curve, no banking turn, just pure vertical drop followed by sudden lateral movement, then another impossible angle change. It disappeared from radar at 11:54. Somewhere in the empty desert, 40 miles northeast. The military said they'd investigate. They always said that. I logged it as unknown atmospheric phenomenon and tried to focus on the actual aircraft I was responsible for keeping alive. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. At 2 a.m., my shift ended. I should have driven home to my empty apartment, microwaved something, taken the sleeping pills that barely worked anymore, and stared at the ceiling until dawn. Instead, I found myself driving northeast into the desert. I told myself I was just curious, professional interest. 12 years of night shifts had taught me that lies to yourself sound most convincing at 2 a.m. The truth was simpler and more pathetic. I had nothing else. No family, no friends, no purpose except preventing the kind of disaster I'd once caused. An unknown radar contact was the most interesting thing that had happened to me in years. I drove on dirt roads that barely deserved the name, following my own sense of the object's trajectory. The desert at night is a special kind of emptiness, the kind that matches what's inside you. At 2:47 a.m., I saw the glow. Not fire, not exactly, more like moonlight, concentrated, pulsing with a rhythm that reminded me of breathing. I parked and walked the last quarter mile, my service flashlight cutting through darkness that seemed thicker than it should be. The craft, because there was no other word for it, had carved a 50-foot trench in the desert floor. Its hull was dark, but reflected starlight in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Geometric, but the geometry was wrong. Angles that shouldn't connect, surfaces that seemed to curve in directions that didn't exist. And next to it, collapsed against a boulder, was the being. 8 feet tall, even seated, proportions all wrong for human. Limbs too long, torso too narrow, head too large, skin that looked gray in my flashlight beam but seemed to shift to silver, to almost translucent, as if the color wasn't fixed. The eyes opened. I should have run. Every survival instinct screamed at me to run, but I'd spent 12 years wishing I'd died instead of those 89 people. What was there to fear anymore? The being's eyes were enormous, black, and completely calm. No white, no iris, just depth that seemed to extend beyond the physical. Then the voice came, but not through my ears. Please, I need your help. The words formed directly in my mind, gentle but clear, not invasive, more like remembering something I'd always known. I stood there, flashlight shaking in my hand, staring at an impossibility. This isn't real, I heard myself say out loud. Stress hallucination, breakdown, finally losing it completely. You have been breaking for 12 years, but this is not fracture. This is opening. It knew my name. I know everything about you, including the weight you carry, the 89 souls, the guilt that consumes you every moment. I can help with that burden, but first, I need physical assistance. I could see now that the being's left side was damaged. Not bleeding, nothing so human, but the skin appeared darker there, almost crystalline, as if the underlying structure was exposed. What do you need? The words came out before I'd consciously decided to speak them. Shelter. Water. Time to heal. I cannot remain here. Your military will come with dawn. He was right about that. They always came eventually. I looked at my car, at this being that shouldn't exist, at the choice in front of me. 12 years ago, I'd made a choice to clear Flight 182, to descend, to trust my reading of the radar, to think I understood the situation. That choice killed 89 people and shattered my soul. Maybe this choice could mean something different. Can you walk? With assistance. I helped an 8-foot alien into my 1987 Buick LeSabre at 3:15 a.m. in the Nevada desert, and the absurdity of that moment was the first thing in 12 years that felt remotely real.
I know how this sounds. An air traffic controller helping an alien who just crashed in the desert. But what this being revealed to me about those 89 souls, about guilt, about Jesus' understanding of human suffering, about why forgiveness is the only path to freedom, changed everything I thought I knew about that day in 1978. Subscribe to Stories of Light and turn on notifications, because understanding who I was before this encounter explains why I was chosen. Let me tell you my story. My name is Raymond Michael Torres. I was born in 1949 in Albuquerque, New Mexico. My father was an aerospace engineer, my mother a mathematics teacher. I grew up surrounded by slide rules, equations, and the absolute certainty that the universe operated on predictable laws. I became an air traffic controller because I loved the precision, the elegant mathematics of flight paths, descent rates, separation minimums. Every aircraft was a vector I could calculate, a position I could predict. The sky wasn't chaos, It was a three-dimensional chessboard, and I was good at the game. By 1978, at age 29, I was working approach control at Los Angeles International. Married to Michelle, my college sweetheart, 2 daughters, Emily, 7, and Sarah, 4. A small house in Torrance with a mortgage we could barely afford. The ordinary, beautiful life I'd always wanted. I was good at my job. Not just competent, excellent. My supervisors praised my situational awareness, my calm under pressure, my ability to handle complex traffic situations. I'd worked thousands of shifts without incident. Until September 3rd, 1978. That morning started like any other. Clear skies, moderate traffic, routine operations. I was working approach control, managing aircraft descending into LAX from the north. At 9:47 a.m., I cleared Pacific Southwest Airlines Flight 182, a Boeing 727, to descend to 3,000 feet. Standard procedure. I'd done it 1,000 times. At 9:48, my radar showed the PSA flight and a small private Cessna 172 on converging paths. I made the call I'd replay in my mind 1,000,000 times. PSA 182, traffic 12 o'clock, 1 mile, northbound. The pilot acknowledged. I watched the radar. The separation looked adequate. The PSA crew had visual on the Cessna. Everything should have been fine. At 9:01:47, both aircraft disappeared from my screen simultaneously. The radio exploded with emergency calls, witnesses on the ground, other aircraft, the tower. I stood there staring at the empty space on radar where 2 aircraft had just been, and I knew. I knew what had happened. I knew I'd misread the situation. I knew those 2 blips disappearing meant human beings, actual people with lives and families and futures had just ceased to exist because of me. PSA 182 had 135 souls aboard. The Cessna had 2. Both aircraft crashed in the North Park neighborhood of San Diego. On the ground, 7 people died when the burning wreckage hit their homes. 144 total deaths, but the number that destroyed me was 89. 89 people aboard PSA 182 who died instantly in the initial collision. The investigation would later show they likely never knew what happened. One moment they were descending into San Diego, the next, nothing. I gave them that nothing. The investigation took months. The NTSB found multiple contributing factors: pilot error, the Cessna's position, communication issues, systemic problems with visual separation procedures in high-traffic areas. My clearance was one factor among many. Officially, I was not found solely responsible. Officially, I was cleared to return to work after mandatory counseling. Unofficially, I died that day too. Michelle tried. God, she tried. But how do you stay married to someone who can't look in mirrors anymore, who wakes up screaming, who sits at the dinner table staring at nothing while his daughters ask if daddy is okay? She filed for divorce in 1980. Got full custody. I didn't fight it. What could I give my children except the knowledge that their father was a killer? I moved to Las Vegas because it was far from everyone who knew. Took a job at McCarran Approach Control because it was the only thing I knew how to do, and night shifts because I couldn't face sunlight. For 12 years, I existed. Worked, slept when the pills allowed it, avoided people, avoided mirrors, avoided anything that might make me feel human. I'd been raised Catholic, gone to Mass every Sunday as a child, believed in a loving God who forgave sins. After September 3rd, 1978, that belief became grotesque. What kind of God would forgive someone who killed 89 people? What kind of forgiveness could possibly matter when those souls were still gone? I stopped praying because prayer felt like insult. Those people were dead. No prayer could undo that. No forgiveness, divine or otherwise, could resurrect them. Friends from before stopped calling after the first year. Family, my parents, my sister, tried for a while, then gave up when I made it clear I wanted to be left alone. My daughters sent birthday cards sometimes. I kept them in a drawer I never opened. Reading them would mean feeling something, and I couldn't afford to feel. Feeling meant remembering I was human, and humans made mistakes that killed people. I was a ghost operating a human body, guiding aircraft safely through airspace every night, proving to myself over and over again that I could do it right, that I wasn't incompetent, that September 3rd was an aberration. But it didn't matter how many aircraft I guided safely, those 89 people were still dead. I thought about suicide constantly, planned it meticulously, which made sense for an air traffic controller trained in precision. Pills and alcohol seemed most reliable. Quick, certain, minimal mess for whoever found me. But I never did it. Not because I wanted to live, because suicide felt like escape. And I didn't deserve escape. I deserved to carry this weight until my body gave out naturally. At 41, I looked 60. Gray hair, deep lines, hollow eyes. I weighed 140 pounds, 30 less than before the accident. Smoked 2 packs a day, because if lung cancer wanted to take me eventually, fine. I had no future, no purpose, no hope. Just the endless repetition of guiding aircraft safely through airspace while remembering the one time I didn't. When people at work asked me why I always took night shifts, I said I preferred them. The truth was simpler. Darkness outside matched darkness inside. I existed in a prison of guilt where every moment was the same. The memory of those radar blips disappearing, the knowledge that my decision had ended 89 lives, the absolute certainty that nothing could ever make that right. That's who I was on March 15th, 1990, when I helped an 8-foot gray alien into my car. A dead man walking, a ghost haunting his own life. Someone for whom the impossible meant nothing because the worst possible thing had already happened. Someone who had nothing left to lose, and therefore nothing left to fear.
I drove in silence, acutely aware of the being folded into my passenger seat. He'd adjusted his limbs into configurations that should have been uncomfortable, but seemed natural to his physiology. His head nearly touched the ceiling. The drive back to my apartment took 40 minutes. I checked the rearview mirror constantly from military vehicles, police, anything. The roads stayed empty. My apartment was exactly what you'd expect from a man who'd given up on living. 1 bedroom, minimal furniture, walls bare except for water stains. I hadn't had a visitor in 8 years. This dwelling matches your internal state, the being observed as I helped him inside. Minimal, functional, devoid of warmth or personality. A space for existing, not living. You're injured and I'm helping you, I said, sharply than intended. We don't need to psychoanalyze my decorating choices. Forgiveness. You are correct. I am in your debt. I helped him to the couch, the only furniture beyond a bed and table. Up close, the injury looked worse. The crystalline damage covered his entire left side, from shoulder to hip.
The surface that should have been smooth gray appeared fractured, like damaged glass. "What do you need?" "Water, not to drink, but to absorb. My biology processes it differently than yours. And time. My cellular structure will regenerate, but the process requires approximately 48 hours. I filled my bathtub, the one luxury I allowed myself, though I rarely used it. The being moved to the bathroom with surprising grace despite the injury, his long limbs navigating doorways with practiced efficiency. "You may go about your routine," he communicated. "I will remain here during regeneration. But Raymond, I did not crash accidentally. I came here specifically for you." "For me? I'm nobody." "You are exactly who you need to be for what comes next. Rest. We will speak more when you wake." I wanted to argue, to demand explanations, but exhaustion crashed over me. I hadn't slept more than 3 hours consecutively in 12 years. The sleeping pills barely worked anymore. I collapsed on my bed fully clothed and slept for 14 hours straight without nightmares. When I woke, sunlight, actual sunlight I hadn't seen in years, streamed through windows I normally kept curtained. It was 4 p.m. I'd missed an entire day. The being sat in my living room, still enormous, but no longer injured. The crystalline damage had disappeared. His skin showed the same smooth gray-silver surface across his entire body. "Your sleep was healing. You needed it." 14 hours. I hadn't slept like that since... I couldn't finish. Since September 3rd, 1978, the day you believe you killed 89 people. My chest tightened. I did kill them. The NTSB report says. I know what the report says. I also know what actually happened. And Raymond, you need to understand something crucial. You did not kill those souls. You were an instrument in a moment they had already chosen. That's insane. Chosen? Those people didn't choose to die in a mid-air collision. Not consciously, but at the level of soul, the eternal consciousness that exists beyond physical form. Yes, they chose. Every soul chooses its entry moment and exit moment before incarnating. Those 89 souls had selected that specific crossing point before they were born. I stood up, anger flooding through me for the first time in years. No, absolutely not. I won't accept some New Age bullshit that removes my responsibility. I made the wrong call. People died. That's reality. I am not removing responsibility. I am revealing context. You made a choice based on incomplete information. Your choice intersected with their pre-selected transition moment. Both things are true. You were neither random nor irrelevant. You were the specific instrument through which their chosen exit manifested. Why would souls choose to die in a plane crash? Why does any soul choose challenging experiences? Growth, learning, teaching others. Each of those 89 souls had individual reasons. Some needed that specific exit for their evolution. Others were teaching lessons to those left behind. Death is not punishment or tragedy from the soul's perspective. It is transition, return, graduation. I wanted to reject it completely,
But something in his words resonated with a part of me that had been screaming for 12 years. What if this wasn't random? What if there was meaning? You said you came here for me specifically. Why? Because you are ready to hear what I must teach about guilt, about forgiveness, about what Jesus of Nazareth really understood when he said those final words that your religions have misinterpreted for 2,000 years.
The being sat across from me in my cramped living room, his 8-foot frame somehow fitting into my cheap armchair in ways that shouldn't have been anatomically possible. I'd slept for 14 hours, the longest, deepest, most peaceful sleep I'd had since September 3rd, 1978. No nightmares, no waking in cold sweats, no pills required. That alone should have convinced me something extraordinary was happening. But 12 years of guilt had taught me to reject anything that felt like relief. Your cellular systems required rest to begin frequency recalibration, the being communicated, his telepathic voice somehow gentler than any spoken words I'd ever heard. Guilt operates at extremely low vibration. It creates physical damage, inflammation, hormonal imbalance, cellular degradation. Your body has been in crisis state for 12 years. Sleep was necessary for healing to begin. I don't want healing, I heard myself say. I want to understand why you're here, why you came to me specifically, and what any of this has to do with those 89 people I killed. You did not kill them. The words hit like physical impact. Don't, my voice came out harsh, angry. Don't try to comfort me with lies. I cleared that flight to descend. My error put them on collision course with the Cessna. The NTSB report, I have accessed the complete record of that event, Raymond. Every radar blip, every radio transmission, every decision made by every participant. I have also accessed something your NTSB cannot. The soul-level agreements of all 89 consciousness entities aboard PSA Flight 182. I stood up, pacing. Soul-level agreements? That's insane! Those were people, real people with families and lives and futures. They didn't agree to die in a mid-air collision. Not at conscious personality level, no. But at the level of eternal consciousness, the awareness that exists before birth and continues after physical life, yes. Every single one of those 89 souls chose that specific exit moment before incarnating into those bodies. You're telling me people choose when they die? At soul level, yes. Not the conscious personality. That would defeat the purpose of incarnation's lessons. But the higher self, the eternal aspect of consciousness, selects both entry point and exit point before physical life begins. Those 89 souls had agreed to transition together at that absolute moment for reasons individual to each. I wanted to reject it completely, wanted to call it New Age nonsense designed to absolve me of responsibility. But something in his words resonated with a question I'd asked myself 10,000 times. Why did it happen? What was the purpose? How could random chance be so specifically cruel? It was not random, he continued, reading my thoughts, or perhaps my facial expressions conveyed them clearly enough. Consciousness creates patterns, agreements, synchronicities. Those 89 souls needed that specific transition moment, and you, Raymond, were the specific instrument through which their choice could manifest. So I'm just, what, a tool that used me to kill themselves? You were collaborator in their pre-planned exit, though you did not consciously know this. Your decision intersected with their soul-level choice. Both things are true simultaneously. You made an error of judgment based on incomplete information, and that error created the exact circumstance they required for their chosen transition. Why would souls choose to die in a plane crash? Each had individual reasons. Some needed that specific trauma to teach lessons to family members left behind, lessons about resilience, compassion, the temporary nature of physical form. Others were completing karmic cycles that required sudden, unexpected exit. Some were advanced souls who had finished their learning curriculum and selected dramatic exit as final teaching opportunity for others. One soul in particular, Sarah Martinez, age 7, chose that exit specifically because her mother's subsequent grief journey would lead her to become counselor for bereaved parents. That mother has now helped thousands process loss. Sarah's death was not tragedy from soul perspective, it was service. My legs gave out. I sat heavily on the couch. You're saying a 7-year-old girl chose to die so her mother could help other people? The soul inhabiting that 7-year-old body was far older than 7 years. Consciousness is eternal. Physical age is temporary costume. That soul had lived thousands of lifetimes, learned countless lessons, and volunteered for a particularly challenging mission, brief incarnation ending in apparent tragedy that would catalyze massive healing in others. She succeeded perfectly, and she holds no anger toward you. None of the 89 do. They understood immediately upon transition. They saw the fuller picture. They recognized you as collaborator, not executioner. Then why have I suffered for 12 years? Because you did not know what they knew. You operated from limited human perspective that sees death as ultimate tragedy, that assigns blame and guilt, that believes consciousness ends when heart stops beating. All of this is misunderstanding, but understandable misunderstanding given your cultural programming. I came here specifically to teach you what those 89 souls learned the instant they transitioned. Death is not ending. Consciousness continues. Physical life is temporary learning experience in a much longer journey. And what appears as tragedy from limited perspective is often precisely choreographed evolution from soul perspective. Why me? Why not teach this to everyone? I am teaching everyone who is ready to hear it. You are one of thousands of humans currently receiving similar information from beings like myself. Your species is approaching evolutionary threshold. Enough individuals must awaken to truth about consciousness, death, and the eternal nature of awareness for collective shift to occur. You were selected specifically because your guilt made you humble, your isolation made you available, your profession demonstrates your capacity for precision and responsibility, and your suffering opened you to truths that comfortable people cannot receive. I sat in silence, trying to integrate what he was telling me. Part of me, the rational air traffic controller trained in physics and provable facts, wanted to dismiss everything as elaborate delusion. But another part, a part I'd suppressed for 12 years, recognized truth in his words. Not intellectual truth, but deeper knowing. The kind of recognition that feels like remembering something you'd forgotten. You require proof, he stated simply. Intellectual concepts are insufficient for transformation. You need direct experience that demonstrates these principles are not philosophy, but physics. Would you permit me to provide demonstrations? What kind of demonstrations? 5 specific proofs. First, I will show you the complete memory of September 3rd, 1978, including details your conscious mind did not register but your subconscious recorded. Second, I will facilitate direct communication with one of the 89 souls so you can verify their forgiveness and understanding. Third, I will demonstrate the healing technology Jesus of Nazareth used by repairing damage in your physical body. Fourth, I will show you consciousness-matter interface by manifesting physical substance. Fifth, I will allow you to observe the actual moment of transition for Flight 182 from soul perspective. After these 5 demonstrations, you will not believe what I teach. You will know it through direct experience. The question is, are you willing to have your understanding of reality completely transformed? I looked at this impossible being sitting in my apartment, at the evidence of his crashed ship I'd seen in the desert, at the fact that I'd just experienced the best sleep in 12 years after he told me my body needed rest. What did I have to lose except the guilt that was killing me anyway? "Show me," I said.
What this being just revealed about those 89 souls choosing their transition shattered everything I believed about guilt and responsibility. If part of you recognizes truth in these words, if you've carried your own unbearable weight, you're exactly where I was in that moment. Thousands are joining Stories of Light to discover testimonies that reveal hidden truths about forgiveness and consciousness. Subscribe and turn on notifications to see what this being demonstrates next, because the proof coming will resolve every doubt you're feeling right now.
"You're telling me what I want to hear," I said, pacing my small living room. "Classic psychological manipulation. I've carried this guilt for 12 years, and now a convenient alien appears claiming those people chose to die. It's too perfect. My mind is creating exactly the delusion that would relieve my suffering." Consider, if your mind were creating delusion, would it have waited 12 years? Would it manifest as an 8-foot being whose existence contradicts everything you were trained to believe? Delusions typically comfort quickly. Yours have never comforted you at all. Maybe I finally broke completely. You broke 12 years ago, Raymond. You have been broken this entire time. What is happening now is not further breaking. It is the possibility of healing. Your skepticism is healthy. Maintain it, but do not let it prevent you from examining evidence. Even if souls choose their exit, and I'm not accepting that, it doesn't change that my error caused it. Those families still lost loved ones. Children lost parents. People suffered because of my mistake. Yes, suffering occurred, loss occurred, pain occurred. These are true. But consider, if those souls had exited through different means, heart attacks, car accidents, any of infinite possibilities, would the suffering of those left behind have been less? The loss of a loved one produces identical grief regardless of the method. But I was the method. I was the cause. You were one factor among many in a complex system that produced a specific outcome at a specific moment. The family's pain is real. Your remorse is real. And those 89 souls knowing their transition moment was real. All 3 truths coexist. This is not about removing accountability. It is about understanding the fuller picture. The church taught me that sin requires repentance and forgiveness, that taking a life, even accidentally, is a mortal sin, that I need God's forgiveness, which I can never deserve because I can't undo what I did. And this teaching has tortured you for 12 years. Has it helped those 89 souls? Has it brought them back? Has it healed anyone? Or has it simply imprisoned you in endless suffering while calling it righteousness? It's what I deserve. According to whom? A religious system that profits from guilt? Raymond, Jesus of Nazareth, never taught that suffering demonstrated virtue. He taught the opposite, that freedom, joy, and love were the natural states of aligned consciousness. The Church transformed his message of liberation into a control mechanism based on eternal unworthiness. If souls choose their deaths, what about murdered children, victims of genocide? Are you saying they chose that? That's obscene. I understand your revulsion. From the limited perspective of one lifetime, yes, it appears obscene, unjust, impossible. But consciousness is eternal. Each soul experiences thousands of lifetimes across various dimensions and circumstances. Some souls choose extremely challenging experiences specifically because they accelerate growth, not because they are punished, but because they are courageous. So Hitler's victims chose the Holocaust? The souls who experienced that horror chose to participate in one of humanity's most profound teaching moments, demonstrating the depths of compassion failure and the resilience of human spirit. They were not weak victims, but spiritual warriors teaching lessons humanity desperately needed. This does not excuse the perpetrators' choices. They generated massive karmic consequences they will address across many lifetimes. Both truths exist. Why would you come here for me? I'm nobody. A failed air traffic controller living alone in a crappy apartment, waiting to die. There are better people, more important people you could teach. Jesus did not choose kings, priests, or the powerful. He chose fishermen, tax collectors, the broken. Because, Raymond, the broken are open, the wounded are humble. Those who have touched depths of suffering understand compassion that the comfortable never access. You are not nobody. You are someone whose suffering has prepared you for wisdom that most humans never discover. I don't feel wise. I feel destroyed. Yes, and destruction creates space for reconstruction. You cannot build new understanding on foundation of old certainties. First, the old structure must collapse. Yours collapsed 12 years ago. Now you are ready for what comes next. If I accept this, if I stop believing I killed those people, what does that make me? Someone who evades responsibility? Someone who makes excuses? The guilt is the only thing proving I'm not a monster. If I let it go, what's left? What if what remains is who you actually are beneath the guilt? What if the guilt has been obscuring your true self for 12 years? You fear that without guilt you are nothing. I propose the opposite. With guilt you have been nothing. Without it, you can finally become who you were meant to be. The guilt is all I have. No, Raymond, the guilt is all you have allowed yourself to have. There is so much more available to you. But first, you must release the prison you have built from suffering. Even if everything you're saying is true, even if those souls chose their moment, how do I forgive myself? How do I wake up every day knowing that 89 people died and I was part of it? How do I look at my daughters who grew up without a father because I couldn't bear to be around them? How do I accept that I wasted 12 years drowning in guilt when maybe I could have lived? My voice broke. 12 years of tears I'd refused to shed came pouring out. Raymond, listen carefully. Jesus of Nazareth, hanging on the cross in agony, looked at those who had tortured him and said, "Father,
Forgive them, for they know not what they do. Do you understand what he was teaching in that moment? That we should forgive our enemies? Deeper, he was teaching that all beings, including those causing harm, are operating from incomplete understanding. The soldiers did not comprehend whom they were crucifying. Pilate did not understand the consciousness before him. The crowd did not recognize what they were witnessing. They acted from ignorance, not malice. And you, Raymond, on September 3rd, 1978, you did not know those souls had chosen that moment. You did not know the fuller context. You operated from incomplete information and made your best judgment. You, like the Roman soldiers, knew not what you did. And if Jesus could offer forgiveness for those who intentionally tortured him, do you not deserve forgiveness for an error made without malice, without intention, without full knowledge? I collapsed onto the couch, sobbing, 12 years of agony pouring out. The 89 souls forgive you, Raymond. They understood immediately upon transition. They harbor no anger, no judgment. The question is, when will you forgive yourself?
The being stood, his 8-foot frame somehow not threatening in my small space. You require proof. I will provide it. First, I will access your complete memory of September 3rd, 1978. Not just what you consciously remember, but what your subconscious recorded. That's impossible. Memory doesn't work like, close your eyes. I did, reluctantly. Suddenly, I was there. 9:47 a.m. LAX approach control. I could see the radar screen in perfect detail, every blip, every data tag, every vector. I could hear the radio traffic, feel the air conditioning, smell the coffee I'd been drinking. But I was seeing it from outside myself. I watched myself make the clearance call, watched myself check the separation, watched myself trust the visual contact report. And then I saw something I'd never consciously noticed. Another controller, distracted for 3 seconds by a phone call. The backup check that should have happened didn't. A systemic failure, not just my error. You have blamed yourself exclusively. But observe, 17 factors contributed to that collision. Your decision was one. Pilot visibility limitations was another. The Cessna's transponder malfunction was a third. The air traffic control procedures of 1978 were inadequate. They were reformed afterward specifically because of incidents like this. You were one component in a complex system failure. I opened my eyes, trembling. How did you show me that? Memory is energy pattern. All moments are recorded in consciousness field. I simply accessed and played the recording with fuller perspective than your guilt allowed you to see. Second demonstration. Would you like to communicate with one of the 89 souls? They're dead. That's insane. Physical forms died. Consciousness transitions. Those are different statements. Choose someone from the passenger list. I knew the list by heart. Every name burned into my memory. Sarah Martinez, 7 years old, same age as my daughter Emily was. Yes, young soul with specific purpose. Observe. He placed his long-fingered hand near my forehead, not quite touching. Suddenly, presence flooded my awareness. Not a voice, more like knowing, warmth. joy. Absolutely no fear or anger. The knowing communicated. Thank you. My crossing was supposed to be that way. You helped me return home when I was ready. The grief my mother carried taught her compassion that changed hundreds of lives. She became a counselor for bereaved parents. My death was not waste. It was service. You did nothing wrong. I love you. The presence faded. I was sobbing again. That was real. That was actually her. Yes, consciousness continues. Death is transition, not termination. She wanted you to know she is fine, better than fine. And she chose you specifically as part of her exit because your guilt would eventually lead to this moment, this awakening that will help thousands. I will now demonstrate the healing technology Jesus used. You smoke heavily. Your lungs are damaged. Give me permission to repair them. You're going to heal my lungs? Jesus healed through conscious direction of cellular energy. I will demonstrate the same principle. This will feel unusual but not painful. He placed his hand on my chest. Warmth spread through my ribcage, tingling, alive. I could feel something shifting inside, not painful but intensely present. After 3 minutes, he removed his hand. Breathe deeply. I did. The chronic tightness I'd lived with for years, gone. The wheezing, absent. I took the deepest breath I'd managed in a decade. What did you do? I directed healing frequency to damaged tissue. Your cells responded by accelerating natural repair processes. The scarring in your lungs is now reduced by approximately 60%. Complete healing would require multiple sessions, but you can feel the difference. I could. Undeniably. My breathing was easier, clearer, fuller than it had been since before I started smoking. Jesus did this? Jesus mastered this. He could perceive energetic patterns and direct healing frequency with absolute precision. Not supernatural. Natural law you have not yet discovered. Every human has this capacity latent within them. Jesus came to demonstrate what you all can achieve.
Fourth proof. Jesus manifested bread and fish. I will demonstrate the principle on smaller scale. He picked up an empty glass from my sink. Watch. He held the glass, his large eyes closing in concentration. I watched, skeptical, waiting for the trick. Water began appearing in the glass, not pouring, materializing. Molecule by molecule, the glass filled from empty to half full over the course of 2 minutes. Drink it. I did. Pure, clean water. No taste of pipes or chemicals, just water. How? Consciousness is creative force. Matter is consciousness vibrating slowly. When you understand the relationship between thought and physical form, you can arrange atomic structures into desired configurations. Hydrogen, oxygen, abundant in atmosphere. Arrange them correctly. Water. Jesus understood this perfectly. The multiplication of loaves and fishes was molecular reorganization through focused intention. Anyone can learn this? Jesus said, "You will do greater works than I have done." He meant it literally. These are not miracles, they are applications of consciousness technology. Your species is beginning to discover
quantum physics that explains what mystics have known for millennia. Final demonstration. I will show you the moment of transition for PSA Flight 182. Not to traumatize you, but to show you what actually occurred from the soul perspective. I don't know if I can handle that. You have been handling the worst interpretation for 12 years. Truth will be easier than imagination. He touched my forehead again. I saw the collision, but not from the ground, not from radar, from above, from outside time. I saw the physical event, two aircraft meeting, the horror of impact, the fall to Earth. But I also saw the souls, 89 lights separating from physical forms in the instant of impact, not violently torn, released like exhalation, and each light immediately surrounded by other lights, guides, loved ones who had died before, beings of pure compassion. I saw Sarah Martinez's light greeted by her grandmother, saw her joy, actual joy, at recognition and reunion. I saw every single soul welcomed, celebrated, guided home. And I saw something else, a pattern. The 89 lights forming a specific geometric configuration as they transitioned together. Purpose, design, chosen. They were not victims, Raymond. They were volunteers. Each one knew, each one consented, each one completed exactly what they came to complete. Your role was not executioner. It was facilitator. They needed someone to help them cross together at that moment, and you were the one who could provide that service. The vision faded. I understood. Finally, truly understood.
Now you are ready to understand what Jesus really taught from the cross. The being communicated, settling his long form into my small chair. The words, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do," your religions interpreted this as Jesus asking God to forgive humans their sins. But Raymond, Jesus was consciousness in human form. He was not asking an external deity for anything. He was teaching a principle. What principle? That all harmful actions arise from incomplete understanding. The soldiers crucifying him did not comprehend that they were torturing an enlightened being. They operated from ignorance, following orders, performing duties. From their limited perspective, they were executing a criminal. They literally knew not what they did. Jesus was demonstrating radical compassion, the ability to recognize that all beings, even those causing harm, are consciousness operating from whatever level of awareness they currently possess. Forgiveness is not excusing harm. It is recognizing the ignorance from which harm arises. And my situation? You operated from incomplete information. You did not know those souls had pre-selected that crossing moment. You did not know the fuller context. You made your best decision with the data available. You knew not what you did. This is not excuse, it is truth, and truth is foundation of forgiveness. Consciousness is eternal, Raymond. The you that is aware right now, that observes thoughts, experiences emotions, makes choices, has always existed and will always exist. Physical incarnation is temporary learning experience. So we reincarnate,
Like Buddhism teaches?
Now you are ready to understand what Jesus really taught from the cross, the being communicated, settling his long form into my small chair. The words, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Your religions interpreted this as Jesus asking God to forgive humans their sins. But Raymond, Jesus was consciousness in human form. He was not asking an external deity for anything. He was teaching a principle. What principle? That all harmful actions arise from incomplete understanding. The soldiers crucifying him did not comprehend that they were torturing an enlightened being. They operated from ignorance, following orders, performing duties. From their limited perspective, they were executing a criminal. They literally knew not what they did. Jesus was demonstrating radical compassion, the ability to recognize that all beings, even those causing harm, are consciousness operating from whatever level of awareness they currently possess. Forgiveness is not excusing harm, it is recognizing the ignorance from which harm arises. And my situation? You operated from incomplete information. You did not know those souls had pre-selected that crossing moment. You did not know the fuller context. You made your best decision with the data available. You knew not what you did. This is not excuse, it is truth, and truth is foundation of forgiveness. Consciousness is eternal, Raymond. The you that is aware right now, that observes thoughts, experiences emotions, makes choices, has always existed and will always exist. Physical incarnation is temporary learning experience. So we reincarnate, like Buddhism teaches. Consciousness evolves through multiple experiences across various dimensions and forms. Your current identity as Raymond Torres is one chapter in an eternal book. Before this life, you existed in other forms, learning different lessons. After this physical form ceases, you will continue integrating what you learned, preparing for next experience. Why don't we remember other lives? For the same reason you don't watch movies while reading instruction manual. Each life is designed for specific learning. Memory of all other lives would contaminate current experience. You forget so you can fully engage with the present curriculum. But at soul level, beyond conscious memory, you remember everything, every life, every lesson, every relationship. This is why some people feel inexplicably drawn to certain places, certain eras, certain others. Soul memory bleeding through. Your species' primary source of suffering is misunderstanding death. You view it as ending, as loss, as tragedy. But Raymond, you have now seen what actually occurs. Physical death is no more tragic than removing a costume after performance. But the grief is real. Those families suffered. Yes, grief is real. Loss of physical presence is real. But grief is not proportional to the supposed tragedy of death. It is proportional to attachment to physical form and ignorance of consciousness continuity. In cultures that understand death as transition, grief is different, still present but not devastating. They mourn the temporary absence but celebrate the soul's return home. Your culture treats death as ultimate catastrophe because your religions use fear of death as a control mechanism. Jesus conquered death through resurrection. Jesus demonstrated that consciousness survives physical death. His resurrection was proof of principle, not unique miracle. He showed, look, I can leave this body and return. Death is not what you think it is. But the Church transformed his demonstration into doctrine of exclusive divinity, missing the entire point. Guilt serves evolutionary purpose at basic level. It creates discomfort around harmful behavior, encouraging change. But Raymond, you have been trapped in guilt for 12 years. This is no longer functional, it is prison. Isn't that what I deserve?
Deserve is a concept invented by religions to control behavior. The universe does not operate on deserve. It operates on frequency, on vibration, on consciousness alignment. Guilt is low frequency. It generates physical illness, emotional suffering, spiritual disconnection. When you operate from guilt, you cannot access higher consciousness, cannot channel love frequency, cannot fulfill your purpose. Your guilt helps no one, not the 89 souls, not their families, not your daughters, not you. It is pure waste. How do I release it? You already have. The demonstrations showed you truth. The soul communication revealed forgiveness that always existed. Now you must choose. Continue carrying unnecessary weight, or accept freedom and apply your remaining life to purpose.
Jesus of Nazareth was not random. He was part of a coordinated consciousness upgrade mission for your planet. Multiple advanced souls have incarnated throughout your history specifically to teach awakening principles. Buddha, Krishna, Lao Tzu, and others. Jesus was one such mission specialist. So, he wasn't the only Son of God? He was exactly what he claimed, one with God consciousness. But so are you. So is every human. He came to demonstrate that truth, not to claim exclusivity. His entire message was, "You are what I am. You can do what I do. I am showing you your own potential." But institutions could not profit from empowered individuals. So they transformed his message of awakening into doctrine of dependency. Only Jesus is divine. Only through him can you access God. Only the church can mediate salvation. This kept populations controlled, compliant, tithing. Your planet is approaching critical threshold, Raymond. Enough humans are awakening to their true nature that collective consciousness shift is becoming possible. The next 20 years will determine whether your species evolves to galactic participation or remains trapped in fear-based separation. Why are beings like you here? We are assistance program. Think of us as teachers who have graduated school returning to help current students. We cannot violate free will by forcing evolution, but we can provide information, demonstrations, encouragement to those ready to receive. Why me specifically? Because your guilt made you humble. Your suffering opened you. Your isolation prepared you for solitude necessary to integrate these teachings. And your story, air traffic controller who killed 89 people and found forgiveness through ET contact, will help thousands release their own unbearable weights. You have approximately 37 more years of physical life, Raymond. You can spend them as you have the last 12, existing in guilt, guiding aircraft, waiting for death, or you can apply what you now know. What do I know? That consciousness is eternal, that souls choose their experiences, that guilt is optional, that forgiveness, real forgiveness, is available, that Jesus taught liberation, not condemnation, that you are far more than you believed, that your suffering was not punishment, but preparation. You have been trained in precision, in systems thinking, in high-stakes decision-making. These skills prepare you perfectly for what comes next, teaching others how to release guilt, how to understand the soul's journey, how to access the consciousness technologies Jesus demonstrated. I'm not qualified to teach spiritual principles. You are exactly qualified. You have touched the depths. You have carried unbearable weight. You have experienced transformation. Those who teach best are not those who never fell. They are those who fell completely and learned to fly.
Forgiveness is not emotion. It is frequency shift. When you hold guilt, you vibrate at guilt frequency. This attracts more guilt-generating experiences and blocks access to higher consciousness. When you release guilt through understanding, your frequency rises, automatically, naturally, without effort. So I just decide to stop feeling guilty? No. Intellectual decision is insufficient. You must understand at cellular level that guilt is no longer serving anyone. The 89 souls do not want your guilt. Their families are not helped by your suffering. Their daughters lost a father to guilt, not to the accident. Your guilt has been entirely self-inflicted punishment that helped no one. Jesus' forgiveness teaching was frequency technology. Recognize ignorance, release judgment, return to love. This shifts vibration instantly. From that higher frequency, guilt cannot exist, not because you suppressed it, but because you outgrew it.
I sat in silence for a long time after the being finished speaking. Everything he'd shown me, every demonstration, every teaching, it all integrated into a coherent understanding that felt simultaneously impossible and absolutely true. The 89 souls had chosen their crossing moment. I was instrument, not executioner. My guilt had been self-imposed prison. Forgiveness was available, had always been available, if I could accept it. I believe you, I finally said, not because I want to, but because I can't deny what I've experienced. The tears came differently this time, not the anguished sobbing of guilt, but deep, cleansing release. 12 years of grief pouring out. Grief for the life I'd lost, the father I hadn't been, the decades I'd wasted in suffering. I cried for hours. The being sat silently, patient, present. When the tears finally stopped, I felt lighter, physically lighter, as if I'd been carrying actual weight that had suddenly dissolved. The next morning, I woke at dawn, something I hadn't done intentionally in years. I opened the curtains I normally kept closed. Sunlight flooded my apartment. I stood there, feeling warmth on my skin, and realized I was experiencing it. Actually experiencing it. Not just enduring existence, but feeling alive. I looked in the bathroom mirror, something I'd avoided for years. The face looking back was still hollow, still aged beyond its years. But the eyes were different. Present, aware, no longer dead. I called my daughter Emily that afternoon. First time I'd initiated contact in 9 years. "Dad?" She sounded shocked. "Is everything okay?" "I don't know yet," I said honestly, "but I want to talk to you. Actually talk. Not just receive your birthday cards and feel guilty for not responding." We talked for 2 hours. I didn't tell her about the being. How could I? But I told her I'd been working through the accident, that I was finally beginning to understand I needed to let the guilt go, that I wanted to know her and Sarah again. She cried. I cried. We made plans to meet for lunch the following week. My lungs continued improving beyond what the being had initially healed. I stopped smoking, not through willpower, but through simple lack of desire. My body didn't want it anymore. I started eating real food instead of microwaved meals. Gained 5 pounds in 2 weeks. Began sleeping naturally without pills, 6 hours a night of deep, restorative rest. People at work noticed. "Raymond, you look different. What changed?" I didn't know how to answer except, "I'm letting go of something I've carried too long." My next shift at McCarran Approach Control felt completely different.
I sat at the same radar screens, managed the same aircraft, followed the same protocols. But my hands didn't shake anymore. My breathing stayed calm. When I cleared aircraft to descend, I didn't experience flashbacks to September 3rd, 1978. I was present, fully present, doing my job with precision and calm I hadn't felt in 12 years. One aircraft got too close to another. Not dangerous, but closer than optimal separation. The pilot corrected immediately. In the past, this would have triggered hours of anxiety. Now, I simply logged it and moved on. Mistakes happen. Systems have backup protocols. The sky is full of redundancy specifically because humans are imperfect. I was human, imperfect, and that was okay. I started experiencing what I can only call expanded awareness. Sitting in my apartment, I could sense the being in the next room without even seeing him, could feel his calm presence. Walking outside, I noticed energy around people, subtle fields of light that seemed to indicate emotional states. Happy people glowed brighter. Anxious people appeared dimmer, contracted. I wasn't trying to develop these perceptions. They emerged naturally as my frequency shifted. Your consciousness is accessing abilities that were always present, but blocked by guilt frequency, the being explained. Jesus called this having eyes to see and ears to hear. Most humans are blind and deaf to 90% of reality. You are beginning to perceive more. 3 weeks after the being's arrival, as his ship finished repairing itself using technology I couldn't begin to understand, he shared the final teaching. You will not become religious teacher, Raymond. You will not start church or movement. Your mission is simpler and more powerful. Live as example of transformation. Show others that unbearable guilt can be released, that souls who have suffered unimaginable loss can heal, that consciousness continues beyond death, that forgiveness, real forgiveness, is possible. How? By living it, by being present father to your daughters, by excelling at your work without anxiety, by helping others when opportunities arise. Your transformed life will be the teaching. People will notice, they will ask, and you will share, not by preaching, but by telling your truth. The night before the being left, I made a vow. I will not waste the remaining years. I'll be the father Emily and Sarah deserved. I'll do my work with integrity, but without terror. I'll help others release guilt when I can. I'll live like someone who understands that consciousness is eternal and death is transition, not tragedy. This is all that is required. Live awake. The rest unfolds naturally. We stood in the desert where I'd found him, his ship restored, humming with energy that made my teeth ache. Will I see you again? You do not need to. You have everything necessary within you now. But Raymond, we are always watching. When humans awaken, we celebrate. Your transformation helps the entire species move closer to threshold. The ship lifted silently, impossibly, and vanished into the night sky. I drove home feeling fully alive for the first time in 12 years.
The week after the being left, I met my daughters for lunch, both of them. Emily, now 19, studying nursing. Sarah, 16, artistic and brilliant, and so much like her mother. I didn't recognize them.
12 years had transformed children into young women. The guilt hit immediately. All the birthdays missed, all the milestones I'd avoided because seeing them meant confronting what I'd lost. But this time, instead of drowning in guilt, I felt it, acknowledged it, and let it pass. "I'm sorry," I told them, "for all the years I wasn't present, for letting the accident destroy me, for choosing guilt over being your father." Emily reached across the table, took my hand. "We understand, Dad. Mom explained about the crash, about how hard it was for you. We missed you." Sarah, quieter, said, "Are you back now? Actually back?" "I'm back." We talked for 3 hours. I told them about finding my way through the grief, not about the being, but about learning to forgive myself, about understanding that carrying guilt didn't honor the dead, it just created more suffering. At work, I requested day shifts for the first time in 12 years. My supervisor was shocked. "Raymond, you've been on nights since you started here. Are you sure?" "I'm ready for daylight again." Working days meant interacting with more people, more complexity, more visibility. In the past, this would have been unthinkable. Now it felt like returning to life. I became mentor to new controllers, teaching them not just technical skills, but how to handle stress, how to maintain perspective, how to operate with excellence while accepting human limitations. "You're going to make mistakes," I told the young trainee after she cleared 2 aircraft closer than she meant to. "Not might, will. You're human. The question isn't whether you'll err, it's how you'll handle it when you do. Learn, adjust, forgive yourself, move forward." She looked at me with such relief. "My trainer before you said, 'Controllers who make mistakes kill people.'" Controllers who make mistakes in systems with inadequate safeguards sometimes contribute to tragedies. But one human error should never be catastrophic. That's why we have redundancy, backup protocols, multiple oversight layers. If one person's mistake can destroy everything, the system is broken, not the person. I was teaching what I'd learned. 6 months after the encounter, I visited the crash site memorial in San Diego. First time I'd gone deliberately. I'd driven past it once before, years ago, and had to pull over to vomit from anxiety. This time, I stood before the memorial wall, listing all 144 names. Found Sarah Martinez. Touched her name gently. "Thank you," I whispered, "for choosing me to help you cross, for forgiving me, for teaching me that consciousness continues." An older woman standing nearby heard me, gave me a strange look. "Did you know someone on the flight?" "In a way. I was the air traffic controller who cleared PSA 182 to descend." Her face transformed. Shock, recognition, then something softer. "My husband was on that plane, Michael Rodriguez." My heart stopped. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." She studied my face for a long moment. Then, inexplicably, she smiled gently. "You've carried this a long time, haven't you?" I nodded, unable to speak. "Michael came to me in a dream about a year after the crash. He was happy, peaceful. He told me it was his time, that everything happened exactly as it needed to. I thought grief was making me imagine it." She paused. "But looking at your face, at how this has marked you, maybe he really did come to tell me it wasn't anyone's fault. Maybe he wanted me to know so I could tell you if we ever met." We stood together in silence, 2 people connected by tragedy, finding unexpected grace.
My transformation affected everyone around me. Emily decided to specialize in trauma counseling. Sarah started painting scenes of light and transformation. My ex-wife, Michelle, called, said she'd heard from the girls I was doing better, and asked if we could talk sometime. I was becoming whole again, not because the past changed, but because I finally understood it differently.
Raymond Torres speaking to you now, 15 years after that encounter in the Nevada desert. I'm 68 years old. I retired from air traffic control 5 years ago. I have 2 beautiful daughters who speak to me regularly, 4 grandchildren I actually know, and a life that once seemed impossible. The being who crashed that night gave me something Christianity never could: understanding that transcended guilt. Your churches teach that forgiveness requires groveling, that you must confess sins repeatedly, that you'll never be truly worthy of grace. They keep you trapped in cycles of guilt and shame, returning weekly for absolution you never quite achieve. But Jesus of Nazareth taught something radically different. He taught that all harmful actions arise from incomplete understanding. They know not what they do. This applies to everyone, including you, including me. We operate from whatever level of awareness we possess. When we act from ignorance or fear or pain, we generate consequences. But consequences are learning opportunities, not eternal damnation. For 12 years, I believed I was beyond forgiveness because I'd caused 89 deaths. The truth was more complex and more compassionate. Those souls had chosen their crossing moment before they were born. I was instrument in their transition, not executioner. My guilt helped no one and harmed everyone, especially me. If you're carrying unbearable weight, a mistake you can't forgive, a loss you can't accept, a guilt that's destroying you, hear this. Your suffering is not honoring anyone. It's not making things right. It's not demonstrating virtue. It's simply suffering. And consciousness evolution requires that you release it. Not because you're pretending it didn't happen, not because you're excusing yourself, but because you're recognizing the fuller context. You acted from whatever understanding you had available. You operated with incomplete information. You are human, which means limited, which means imperfect. Jesus forgave those actively torturing him. Can you offer yourself that same compassion? The 89 souls forgave me immediately. Your loved ones, whether living or transitioned, want your healing, not your continued suffering. They want you to learn, grow, and apply your remaining life to love and service. Now you have a choice. You can close this video and return to the comfortable prison of guilt, shame, unworthiness. Or you can do what I did, accept that consciousness is eternal, that souls choose their experiences, that forgiveness is always available, that you deserve to live fully in whatever time remains. Leave a comment telling me, what weight are you ready to release? What guilt has been destroying you? What would your life look like if you finally forgave yourself? Share your story. You might discover thousands of others carrying similar burdens, all waiting for permission to heal. If you want more testimonies that reveal hidden truths about Jesus, forgiveness, and consciousness transformation, subscribe to Stories of Light and turn on notifications.
because Jesus' return is not him descending from clouds to judge you. Jesus' return is you awakening to the Christ consciousness that has always existed within you. The consciousness that knows you are already forgiven, already whole, already divine. Raymond Torres lived 12 years in hell because he didn't understand this. You don't have to make the same mistake. Forgive yourself. Your soul is waiting.